Cool. Hey everyone. So we moved over this week to a new what is it? Google Plus and YouTube channel. So this is our new channel on the TVP UK activism side. We basically created this so that multiple of us could host it. If like I'm not here one week, Joe could host it or Tom could host it. All to and so we would keep all the recordings in one place better for all you guys hopefully. So that explains that. Cracking on. We keep going on, well, not laborious, but we're moving on with our TROM series. Where towards the end of section 2 this week, we did some fun stuff like UFOs, extraterrestrial life, history, paranormal powers, and luck. So we've got some good notes already from this, and I know I've got some, I'm sure everyone else does. But Ludus, do you want to start off maybe with your first point on UFOs?
Sure. Sorry, gotta close the window. Can't have fresh air without disturbance, of course. Alright, well, the UFO stuff, all I had is when the professor, or I suppose he was a professor, the biology professor from some university or another, I really cannot remember which, commented on the biological impossibility of horror movies. And gave example of aliens as well as the spaceship troopers. I'm just sort of, I don't know, I mean, there's not really all that much to combat stuff. So for instance, you know, let's say even the currently renowned, I don't know what the previous runners up were, but currently renowned science show to speak of was Cosmos, as far as I can tell. People were raving about it and whatnot. But honestly, I only have seen the first episode, and I'm not sure how much into biology it actually digs on, so that films like that from Hollywood that get people scared about machines and about, you know, biological entities and whatnot, yes. And, UFOs are gonna come, fuck you, examine you, impregnate you with two-headed babies or whatever. You know, it's unfounded. And then when some stuff is, I'm not sure if how many of you were into UFOs before you sort of discovered that maybe scientific views are a little bit better than pseudoscience. I was heavy into UFOs. Okay, I was very interested and sort of fanatical almost about it. Every single picture you show me is a fact. Okay. And you know, and now in hindsight, I come back to the same sites, and lo and behold, they have no references, none to speak of. There is one person, though, Dr. Stephen Greer, who has this whole disclosure project, and these retired generals and engineers and various other people are saying that they swear on their life and their credentials, past and present, that this is true. You know, this is something we should give a shit about. Only recently, though, has the song changed, and this is the paradigm shift that I've seen myself. He has now shifted his perspective from, oh, we need to know about this, and this has to be disclosed, to, oh, the only thing and the only reason why no one will disclose this is actually because the oil companies, by maintaining the current tech, they get to maintain their advantage in the financial market. So all of a sudden, it's not about reaching out to extraterrestrial life. We don't give a shit about other intelligences in the cosmos. We actually care that, oh yeah, this new tech that these creatures have will overthrow the steaming giants or financial corporations now. So it's a bit of a conversation change there. So I'm not sure. I mean, now they seem more approachable even by an entity such as TVP, so to speak, than before. So now they're a little bit more to Earth, but still there's these creatures out there and they're intelligent and the governments are working with them, you know, all kinds of shit. And then of course you get Neil deGrasse Tyson saying that, you know, 1% chimps and humans, and we produce, you know, Beethoven, Tesla, all that shit. So now 1% from us, and they're sex obsessed. They work with governments to produce weapons or flight technologies, and they're sharing it with humans. Yet Tyson suggests, I mean, would you talk to a worm? So that's, I mean, all these paradoxes. So really, so far, I don't know. I just written down that essentially these Education of the populace would, in time, get rid of the superstition and beliefs not reflecting physical reality. Um, Obviously, we would need to test that. I don't know, I don't know honestly. But really, all that is by the wayside. Actually, the one thing that did catch my eye is Tyson suggests eyewitness testimony not worth a shit, according to him. Now, the problem with that is Jacques went to Tuamotu Islands, visited Hell's Kitchen, New York, talked to KKK, Flat Earth Society, and was able to turn them around. That's his language. All of these are testimonies. So the questions that follow that really, and I'm sorry if it is a segue too much, then just interrupt me and let's move on. But if we can stay on it, and I would like some of your views. How are we to verify what Jacques said? How are we not to fall into confirmation bias? Where would you look for compelling and contradicting evidence, just to balance stuff out, to back up Jacques' stories? And would he not need to do that himself? So, I mean, I don't know. There are the bunch of questions. Which ones you like to tackle? And like I said, if it's too much of a segue, just let's move on.
I think, yeah, it does. I suppose Jack does need to kind of prove that he did those things. But how is he going to do it? I mean, he's old now. Maybe I don't think it's doable anymore. I think maybe the stories that he's talking about. Yeah, if you can't confirm, yeah, if you can't confirm that he did them, then really, yeah, the, there's nothing really we can do. Maybe just test out the theories, I suppose.
No, I think I guess you're right, and we have a certain problem. I guess looking into Jacques' history and stuff is that it is going to be fairly poorly documented. The documentation that is there is going to be people like Sean doing the timeline, and then you get into a whole thing like Ludus. You showed me the other day the thing about superfoods, where they publish their own papers and stuff like that. You get into this problem. I guess certain things like whether Jacques did disband the KKK, you could go and look at their Hall of Records if they have one, I guess, or because I really don't know much about the KKK. I assume it was some sort of official organization rather than just a underground type thing. So they probably had some sort of government papers that they needed or something like this. But yeah, you do kind of have to come down to, I guess, listening to Jacques and kind of going, well, that's something that he experienced and he's trying to convey that. But we do keep in mind that he's gone through his perception channels, as Neil deGrasse Tyson showed, is pretty poor, or can be. So we have to take it with a pinch of salt and look for more detailed answers if you want to kind of use that as a cornerstone. I didn't think it say the thing closing down the KKK. I don't think it's that kind of important. You know what I mean? For me, I don't use it very much as an example. I don't really think like the Venus Project is founded on that in these ideas. But yeah, Joe?
You kind of took my point to me. I was going to say if you really delved deep enough, you could get some kind of evidence to support some of the things he said, like the KKK disbanding and everything else. But like you said, Lewis, you don't really know. I hope it's all factual and it's all he's all above board. But I can't help but think that there'll be some snippets. I don't really want to say this, but there'll be some bits and pieces that I'm sure he's enlarged slightly or made to see. I think everybody does it now and again, but I think that's just what we are. I suppose it's what we are as humans. But it's a good question, Lucas. I don't really know how to answer it properly, to be honest.
Okay, well, that's all of you guys gave very. I mean, honestly, so far, really, what I gather then is you're all really quite humble. None of you really jumped out there to, no, it's the fucking truth, you know. So it's great. I mean, with this attitude, then clearly we're gonna uncover something or another. And honestly, Joseph, so you have said perhaps enlarge some bits. Maybe recently, maybe. And I'm only saying that because Jacques' style, so far as I can see, again, this is just my observation. I can be fucked up and wrong, all time possibility. In 70s and 80s lectures, he used to, and really, habitually, call out every single example where something isn't so. So if he would say, again, true story. I don't know what to do with those words, but the way in that context seemed to reflect reality more so than just sort of hyperboles or hypothetical suggestions. And when they are hypothetical suggestions, he says, imagine Joe, it's one of the people who used to come there. Imagine Joe stumbles into my homes. This isn't true, he doesn't drink. He used to every single lecture do that. But that 70s and 80s, I don't really as such recall the 2010, 11, 12 lectures, him having that habit. Again, if I'm wrong, interrupt me, correct me, I mean, that's why we're here, right, to learn. But also, something of note, lately, by going through, in Coursera, it's a free course, it's now nearing the end, but it's a social psychology course, and it's led by a Wesleyan University. Shit, I keep forgetting what state in, but that course has actually confirmed a very large chunk of what Jacques is talking about. And these studies, well, fortunately in Coursera, are followed up by peer-reviewed papers, case studies, examples. And actually Zimbardo and Milgram's experiments are referred to as well, to do with authority and shit like that. So just just to keep that in mind. So the KKK and stuff like that, I think, Aiden, your examples are definitely something to keep in mind, but I'm not entirely sure. That's kind of a systematic way of how to access those records is, I think, what I'm looking for. I just don't. I mean, would you actually have to go to the old school libraries and when they use those knobs and shit to turn the newspapers? I mean, I don't know how to access that. That's all.
Well, yeah, we kind of there's the kind of problem of history. All over, we can't go back to take new measurements. We're only relying on what minuscule has been survived. I don't know. It's not quite relevant, but in the 70s lectures, I think you're right. Jacques' presentation style has definitely changed over the years. This is why I really like the 70s lectures. I think they were more raw. They were more interesting. I think he was still working things out. He kind of goes over in one of the lectures a bit about how you use 30 different examples, and it seems for the majority of the people, example 3 works. So he's kind of refined, I think, his ability to present things, especially as a first off kind of audience. And yes, he does swear a lot. I really like the old ones. If anyone hasn't listened to them, you can get all the examples, the excerpts from YouTube. But yeah, there is a really good one on there where he talks about UFOs and the guy who thought he went on a UFO, and I don't know. There's a whole thing, but it was really, really interesting. In the way that he showed how certain items that were supposed to be alien weren't, and how you could rectify, like if someone's like an engineer or something, and they went into the UFO, but the doors just used normal hinges, then there's a problem there. It was very cool. Anyway, the X's are queuing up. Lidus?
Yeah. What I was going to say. One thing that did get stuck in my head, and that's the humility of Fresco during one lecture specifically, when he has said, "Don't be so sure of anything that you know or see, because I'm not sure of anything I'm seeing here." And I recall that very specifically because really that just boils down to, yes, criticize. I mean, even in 2010, what am I talking about so long ago? 2010 lecture. I cannot recall which one. That will require some re-listening to. But he said, so yeah, don't, no, it is actually, it's the TVP concept of a cybernated government. It's specifically that one where he tried to answer some questions. And essentially he says, look, in the Bible it says, cast not a stone or some shit like that at whoever hasn't committed a sin. So he goes, don't cast stones and don't, make up your own projections of what the Venus Project is and what it's not. Ask us, and if you have critiques, give it to us, but don't make up your own projections and go spread it outward. So I think in that regard, his logic and outlook really has maintained that he is very open to critique. But it has to be pretty specific, I suppose. Otherwise, it just ends up saying, answers are either very short or he says you have to be specific about it. In regards to the UFO, yes, it's a shame that I didn't even recall this because it's a very serious point. I mean, he says that one thing really called out to me. Every single physicist in the country then would wake up and would not be able to contain the excitement to get to the office or the lab, wherever that material or creature or technology or anything to do with out of Earth affairs, they wouldn't be able to contain themselves. I mean, the math and the physics and everything they knew would be changed, or if not, then definitely updated. But that's just all I have.
Sorry, yeah, I was eating. My bad. You stopped all of a sudden, Ludus. I wasn't prepared for that. I was just gonna I was gonna go off Aiden's point where I don't know, I can't remember now. You you were saying something about examples, and Neil deGrasse Tyson in the video mentioned the cop car. I don't know if you saw it, where he thought he could see something. It was just Venus, but because he was on a curved road, so that, it was that focused. He was that is definitely a UFO. It's like, nah, you're just on a curved road, my friend. You're just that focused on. I think that's what is difficult with eyewitness accounts. You see what you really want to see. Like me right now, Ludus is half naked. That's what I want to see. That's just interpretation. I mean, it doesn't actually, it doesn't actually mean that that's what it is. I think that's something definitely to consider. Not Ludus naked, but that's definitely something to consider. That everything is by interpretation, especially in the case of weird things in the sky.
Yeah, I like he kind of shows up how poor opinions and kind of voting kind of comes in when he does this thing where they looked at the number of amateur astronomers that see UFO sightings, and they know what they're looking for. They're actually out there looking for things, and they know a bit. And it's much lower than normal people, and they're the ones that are looking most of the time. It was a very good point, I think, well made. There was a lot of good stuff from Tyson in there. Wasn't too much of a fan of the second bit. I think it was too much. Aliens would be so impressive that to look down on us, they'd swat us like a fly. That's just kind of. It's probably they're going to look at us in a different way, but it's not going to be the same way that we look at chimps. They'll look at us with a completely different mindset. It's more sophisticated, so probably is more like a tuning. So I don't know. We have no idea what aliens will be like. Anyway, Joe.
Yeah, I was gonna make that point afterwards, which is I always used to say before I watched that lecture, I was always used to think that why would extraterrestrial life even take notice of us anyway? If I walk past millions of creatures on the way to work, I don't stop, bend down and study them. I just walk past. But when you put it that way, anyway, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just us being but we interpret ourselves as better than other creatures around us because, let's face it, we are. But in the same sense, that it doesn't mean necessarily that they will stop just because, let's say, for example, they see electricity being used. They know there's some kind of civilized life there. It's an interesting point because I really would like to discuss the point of, would aliens, in a broader sense, would they stop and take note, or would they just go on by? I mean, what do you guys actually think about that?
To be honest, I do sometimes stop and watch the animals on the way to work. But also, I kind of watched a documentary. It was on video, and to do with if we found life on another planet, how different it might be to us. They'd probably not even be able to comprehend us in the same way we comprehend them. Like, I don't know, maybe the lights see us differently, or I mean, they might not even show up to us, or we might not be able to hear their voice boxes or something. But yeah, I think if they could see us or hear us, then I think they'd be curious. But then again, they might not have no curious behaviour whatsoever. So.
In the same sense, though, Mick, in terms of hearing and stuff like that, I hear a dog bark, and I'm not curious, if that makes sense. I know it's just, maybe to us we're just another life form. Maybe they already know about us. They hear us, but they're not bothered. It's like when a dog barks. I really couldn't care where it's coming from. You just go about your daily life.
So there's well, I think they kind of mentioned it in Cosmos. I can't remember the actual distances, but if you went home and did the maths of when we started broadcasting radio things into outer space, specifically, it won't have gone that far. It won't have hit that many solar systems that are outside of our own. So, and to get these things back, if as we kind of believe think at the moment, if the light speed cannot be accessed, then you've got serious limitations to go across galaxy type kind of. Just thinking about those distances, then, and so if they do decide to come here, I think they would be interested. I don't think they come here by chance, because what's the chances? So many solar systems, and how much they might well have sensors that are much more kind of machine than us. Okay. It's kind of hard to see, and I don't know. I guess because of a book series that I read a while ago that kind of put forward these ideas. I'm not sure whether they're entirely true, but they generally went along the lines of the more intelligence, the more humane, safer, whatever the less aggressive. They kind of push that causality. Not saying it's true, but maybe that's affecting where I'm going, and it kind of still does ring true, I think. But we'll see. We'll see. It depends what you consider intelligence and all this stuff. Okay, Joe.
I guess we just have to wait and see. Hopefully they visit soon, but I doubt it. I was gonna move topic. I was gonna make another point actually. Neil said at the very beginning of his little section that as a species we are so uncomfortable with not knowing. We as a species we have such a burning desire to know. And I think not knowing the answer to anything is so uncomfortable for humans, especially when it comes to potentially a dangerous threat, or as it's more often perceived, it's going to be more dangerous. And it's going to be beneficial. But I think that's a really good point, that we're actively looking for an answer to it, and I don't think it's not just going to jump out of the sky at us, and it's not just going to reveal itself all of a sudden. I don't think. I just wanted to make that point. So.
No, yeah, that was it. That was the last kind of bit from this one, which is his explanation of the argument from ignorance, which is what you just talked about. Really interesting to see it actually laid out in that way. I think is very cool. And it does prove a good point. Now, getting into the mechanisms of whether this is biologically driven or whether it's culturally driven, well, which elements are which is quite interesting. From what I understand about the limited aspects I understand about the brain, the kind of limbic system, which is all the hormonal stuff that goes on in the brain. Expectations and stuff have been very, because that's what it is, it's expectations. And coming up with an expectation for something to some sort of occurrence that happens, that has been very useful for us in the past. It allowed us to escape the lions when they started coming over in the savannah and all this kind of stuff. And it seems to be a part of our brains. And as to how much we can intellectually kind of override that and go, actually, no, we should. We're on this level of we're actually ignorant at this time. We shouldn't be answering. It's something that we can get over intellectually, but do you do it every time? I find myself bullshitting answers all the time. I know that I'm doing it. I'm trying to actively stop. But I still find myself doing it. Do you guys kind of have that same thing? Yeah, Joe, you're right. It's a defense response to come up with an answer. And I think partially this is where the culture comes in, because all our jobs essentially are based on knowledge. You only have a job with knowledge, just where you're trained and all this kind of stuff. And so to admit you don't have knowledge in a system which only pays you for knowledge, well, pretty much some jobs you can get without knowledge at all, but I think even then you still need some sort of knowledge. To admit you don't have that is, kind of weakens your position. You further up the redundancy list or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think because culturally, we've been made to, fight wars here, there, and everywhere. I think, like I said before, really, it's a defense response to potentially a intergalactic war, so to speak. But I think film has I'm knocking something over back here. I think film has a big part to play in the way that people think about extraterrestrial life and what they could be and how they could affect this world. Every single film based on extraterrestrial life, or life forms from a different country, from a different planet. I think it's all based on war, but maybe that's just because film, film interprets it's not fun to watch if it was just like a diplomatic meeting continuously. There has to be some kind of action involved. But I'll let you jump on this, Ludus, and destroy my idea. Thank you.
I'm just going to jump ahead quickly. Just on the idea of all this wars and stuff, I think things like what is it? Mission Impossible? No, what is it? Independence Day and all this kind of stuff of these invaders from outer space. They've traveled across galaxies. They've gone at they must have near light speed propulsion, surely. So, and the Earth is on such a predictable trajectory. They could just power up a bloody meteorite to come flying in at us at near light speed and just wipe us out. If they really wanted to, we're not going to know about it. I really so we have to stop worrying, I think, because there's nothing we can do.
Very compelling point. Also, you made a point. I'll try to be quick about it. It mathematically doesn't make sense. Just from, I think, actually from Cosmos. Apparently, you can fit Earth into Jupiter or some shit that's hundreds of times denser than Earth, and then Earth, for however much resource it does have, it's a fucking speck. There are stars that are millions of times bigger and all that kind of stuff, and so Earth is, again, just it's a It's a very specific term for that. I can't remember. Geocentric, I think. Right. The world, everything revolves around us and us. We are the it. We are the shit. It's a bit outdated view. But regardless, films, yes. All the more reason why the movie, at least again, this is from what I understand, all the more reason why TVP's proposal for a major motion picture is that much more of a focal point, and should be a focal point. I mean, why else would people keep talking about shit about, oh fuck, Terminators are coming, when they see a new automation fucking bricklayer or whatever? I mean, you can't, it's not just off-the-shelf idea that's sort of shot into your mind Saturday at 2 p.m. while you were taking a shit. It's something that has to be shown to you. How else are you, some event must stir that idea along. So, yeah, I see that. I see now, I suppose, more and more evidence to my own questions, which are getting answered just by people's reactions. That's all I have.
Cool. I think we've done a lot on UFOs. Anyone else have anything before we go on to mystery? Paranormal. Nope. Okay, well, I actually didn't have too much to say about mystery and paranormal. I thought it was pretty much all covered by UFOs. Same kind of underlying put-downs, I guess, to the whole ideas. But we got some more notes and stuff, so does anyone want to go in?
I'll jump in if no one else will. There's something I wrote down on the Word document, just because while I was reading it. It was very near the end where the actual narrator said if someone had psychic powers, then why would they hide it? But why would they not hide it? It would be scrutinized the world over if you had psychic powers, and I could tell what people were thinking, or I could predict continuously the outcome of anything. Why would you not hide that? I don't understand that. He says it so strongly, like, why would you hide it if you could have so much to gain? But you'd be experimented on if you were found out. People would pick you to pieces if they knew you were psychic. Surely, I just thought that was I thought it was wrong. I'll put it that way. I thought it was a wrong way of thinking about it, but I don't know what you guys think.
Okay, I have to call you on that one, only because Darren Brown, for all his showmanship and whatnot, did actually guess the lottery numbers. He wasn't studied or abducted so far as we know. Also, Rasputin, again, which, please do call him my bullshit if it is bullshit. If he's in fact a historical figure, and that's from the perspective that I learned about him, if he was a real human being, then from what I've learned back in Lithuania, he was actually pretty well received by that time, until he started fucking up with the royal families, and then he, basically was, people were hunting him. But until that time, he was famous. People fucking loved him. Again, it's honestly, I might be ignorant. I might just be completely fucking ignorant, because up to this day, people fucking say that Sherlock Holmes is or isn't real. I still have no fucking clue. So again, it just might be my non-existence of information. But what I did have in regards to the subject, I don't know. Again, I might be wrong, but everything that I wrote down here on the document is more or less what I think. It's Randy's $1 million. Surely, what, you don't want to get richer? I mean, come on, $1 million. Even whatever the fuck currency you convert it to, it's a large amount of money. So not to claim it, I don't know what kind of humble or whatever you are. Another point, if these people are sort of, let's say, goodwill oriented, where were they at Pearl Harbor, Kennedy's assassination, 9/11, Hiroshima's bomb dropping, Fukushima's incident, and to warn Princess Diana? So these things I just can't. I mean, really, what the fuck is that whole gift for? So that eludes me. And also, this is just personal observation. I'm not sure, because I am from what is now referred to Eastern Europe. I saw that shit everywhere, and my mother actually took me to what she called an extra sense It's a human being who basically dipped her hands in water and ran them across from top of my neck down towards my waist on a naked child body because I was apparently too active. So that shows you some shit. Anyway, it's just my observation that these things, these basically pseudo fucking nonsenses, are in fact practiced and are more successful, quote unquote, in places like America or Eastern Europe. Again, please call me on my bullshit. If you have other data, I'd be very glad to learn. That's all I had.
Why do you think it's more successful in them countries, Lewis? Do you have an idea?
Honestly, there's a lot of respect for elders, but respect sometimes transcends to such lengths, whereas they're not just people who have lived a life a little bit longer, so they may know the hardness of a fucking rubber tire or whatever better than you. You transcend that and you treat them as encyclopedia. That's the danger. That's when it starts. Because your grandmother is so steeped in old school shit, your mother is the new generation, and then you, as a son or daughter of your mother, are the third generation. So you're basically 2 generations apart from your grandmother, grandfather, and you're learning their values, their points of view. So it's basically you're twice as retarded as they are, and that's fucked up because you're now living with gadgets and units that can do your job 30,000 times better than you, and you're still basing your knowledge of don't step on a well an odd amount of times because it's bad fucking luck. Are you insane? What the fuck? Like, empirically think about it. If fucking manholes were the unsafest and unluckiest place on earth, people would fucking die, more or less, every single time they pass some shit like that at nighttime. And yet, no, metal just holds. So, seriously, you have no idea how many times I had to fucking flip a knife on its side because the family will incur a conflict if it's fucking upright. I mean, it's just, really, it's beyond retarded. And it does actually impact your daily life. And so there you go. That's folk tales serving as common knowledge from my experience. How severe, more so or less so, it is in Russia or America, again, that's up to whatever we discover online, I suppose.
I have to agree. Superstitions and learning from the grandma's life kind of going backwards. But things like I was talking with a friend about superstitions the other day, and things such as like if a black cat crosses your path, that's bad luck. Yeah, complete superstition. But something like don't walk under a ladder because that's bad luck. I always think the ladder could fall. You know what I mean? Or like don't walk over the grate, then like I don't know, maybe there's a crack in the grate. Just like it's really not superstition, more practical superstition. Like my mum told me once, it's feng shui to if you put your toilet seat down, it's good fortune. And I just started doing it, but I nearly dropped my phone down the toilet, and because I put the toilet seat down, the phone survived. So it was, you know what I mean? I think there's useful superstitions and unuseful superstitions. So yeah, that was just my.
Can't say fairer than that, Mick. I don't know what to say. It's there's the probability factor, isn't there? Like you say, if you walk under a ladder, there is a small chance that it will fall on you. I mean, you're talking tiny, but like you said, there's a chance still. So, has anyone got anything else on supernatural powers?
Only that it's a conversation that could last hours, so beware.
Hello, Tom. Should we move on to like luck, or what do you guys want to talk about now? Luck, yeah, okay, luck, fine. I don't know. Do you want me to start? I've wrote not a lot, but I wrote a couple of bits down. Again, I seem to pick all these things up that are at the end, but at the end of the luck video, one of the solutions is if you create an abundance of materials, resources, food, water, etc., etc., then you eliminate luck through birth, so to speak. So it pretty much the whole video, well, half of the video I should say, was just talking about you are lucky if you are born somewhere with materials, resources, etc. That is pretty much the ultimate. That is lucky, hands down. But you would eliminate that completely if you had resources everywhere. It was a resource-based economy pretty much. If everyone was equal, so to speak, you eliminate that completely, and that's half of the luck gone. I don't know if anyone has any other points, but I didn't really get much from the luck one. Pretty much that's the only thing that really stood out to me. So.
Well, I suppose no one's wrote an X, so I'll go. For me, the word luck and the concept implies random chance, and that's something I'm finding finding it hard to get my head around, kind of thing. Like, the only instance where it kind of seems like it could make sense is in people lucky to be born in certain places. Because without, I suppose, going on a tangent, I don't really understand why does that people. Okay, no, this is getting too philosophical. Basically, I don't understand how the concept of luck can exist, really. So I can't really evaluate, much more than that.
Well, I think. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say I forgot who said it. Probably was in the video somewhere, but when they said, like, when somebody prays for luck and then something good happens, they think because they prayed that's what made it happen. But if they'd not prayed and it still happened, you know what I mean? It's nothing to do with luck. It's just bad things and good things are always going to happen to you. Whether they happen because you've done something is kind of irrelevant.
Okay, just to sort of follow through with your point, Mick, it makes sense. Well done. Bad things or good things are going to happen to you. And for me, the continuation would have been due to the chaotic structure of society. And I think then to connect that idea with the one proposed by TROM and the one brought about by Joe is that, yeah, if you have, in fact, the capability, the technical understanding, the resources, you structure a society then so that it isn't really, let's just try to, for the sake of this conversation, to keep it brief, to construct an environment where it isn't chaotic. Again, whatever the fuck the definition is, I have not looked at Oxford Dictionary, therefore I'm at no position to say. But if we are then to have a consensus, have a construction, have the resources, technical capability, bam, non-chaotic environment. Well, I can easily see how if it's non-chaotic, that means it's system-led. And if it's system-led, so far as we understand that systems either fail or succeed very much on a calculated basis. An electronic grid will only fail if, there's a fucking power surge or the lightning fucks it up or, there's water induced, seeps through the rubber ceiling or whatever. It's so very physical, very mathematical, very pragmatic, you see? So these things of, keep a fucking whip on the side of your bed, if the cat crosses the road, if the fairy kisses your balls, it's just insane. But it becomes that much more mathematic and logical if you do actually have a systems-led society, as well, so far as I understand, TVP proposes. So I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said for chaos, or at least the one that we have today.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. What was I going to say? I guess going back to kind of sticking with chaos, I think there's always going to be an element of uncontrolled stuff, and there's an element of part of what we call luck is like happenstances in the environment that just work out all right, or better than you kind of thought it was going to, or could have disastered otherwise. And I guess, I don't know, is it lucky when, what's his name, the guy who's doing the light bulb, invented the light, or whatever, was it lucky on the 1000th filament that he came across the right combination of metals to make proper light bulb, or because it's kind of luck in the general way that we've talked about it, but it's luck that's been brought about through kind of control going through a whole bunch of things. I don't know. I don't think luck will completely disappear. I think stuff like gambling and things will go. And as they kind of said, and we've said multiple times, that like only on an uneven playing ground can you have luck. The thing is that there is an uneven playing ground. We cannot inhabit the exact same environment and places. So there is going to be uneven in the environment. Whether it's kind of artificial unevenness through money and all this kind of stuff, that's a kind of another thing. But there is still unevenness in the environment, and it could just be that the falling of a leaf in a certain way triggered your brain to think of the new painting. Something, is that luck? That it just happened to fall and catch the wind in that way. I think probably our definition of what luck is, and we'll probably split it out into a couple different terms. Yeah. Lewis?
Yeah, okay, so luck will always exist. So, let's see. No, not luck. In your view, you propose that perhaps some unexpected thing, something that you're just not aware of or you don't know, may or may not happen. Now, I started actually thinking about it. I started thinking about, it may sound bizarre, but people puking, right? What is that? It's a disturbance to your system. Organism says, all right, this is messed up. It does not suit your biology. Get it out in whatever way you can. I started thinking about global climate change. What is that, really? We have introduced some fucked up smoke into ozone, which is otherwise clean as far as we, the science community and the people, can breathe and tell, right? You're not poisoned. You haven't eaten some fucked up food or whatever. And therefore, you know, we sometimes can determine, and doctors can tell us that you have been in fact poisoned by, have you been to such and such location? And therefore they can deduct that, yeah, you actually have been poisoned. So what is the world really, in my view, then? It's puking up. I mean, tornadoes all over the place, you know, bushfires, fish dying out. I mean, sinkholes, what the fuck is that, you know? So you see all these incredible events which really you didn't see before. And what has been happening is, you know, as scientists say, you know, over the decades, the just massive industrialization and rise of it, but not really in concern with how are we going to preserve the biosphere. So to me, that's very simple. Now, what I'm getting at, and I'll try to be brief. So far as you describe it, the things just happen. Now, what if these things that just happened, what if these things were to be perceived? So even if, let's say, we are in fact in a resource-based economy, we're there, that's it. You automated systems globally, no money, people have outgrown greed, all that bullshit, it's done, that's it. We are now a very, very civil society and we understand our environment. What if, with all that understanding, just like, you know, by cosmic events and by chemical reactions, we will incur tsunamis, we'll incur solar flares, all that shit, right? And now, imagine if these things were seen. We can't do anything about it, right? We can't. But we can see that coming. Is it then still lucky if you survive, or is it a very good pre-calculated action that has been taken on the part of people who understand that they can only do so much, but they do survive? Do you see what I mean? I hope I'm making sense.
I think I understand what you mean. I think the biggest part would be the reaction to, let's take tsunami for example. Yeah, there's like, we can predict so far to where a tsunami would hit nowadays. There was somewhere off the coast of America recently or something there that predicted it was going to hit. I don't know. It was like, I think it was recent. It could have been years ago. I'm really not bothered. I'm going to take that point anyway. What I'm saying is, maybe in the future we'll have, well, I imagine we would have better mechanisms to be able to tell us further in advance. Maybe even be able to predict earthquakes better, etc., etc. Maybe that would be something a bit more. I can't think of the word of it, but we'd be able to interpret it faster. And then I don't think, to be honest, I don't think luck exists. But what I was going to say before Ludus made another point, which is a valid point, I was going to try and ask you guys what you think of, you know, them days where everything goes right. I mean, I have the days sometimes where everything just seems to work right. The lights change, for example, at the right time. So I can bike through. I don't have to stop and, you know, get back up to speed on my bike or whatever. And then I get to work and everything's right and it's just easy. It's a breeze. Well, I mean, how do them days happen? Is that luck? I mean, is that what luck is? I'm not sure. And what Aidan said before on the leaf falling from the tree, I don't think that's lucky. I think it's up to you how you interpret that. Maybe if you are an artist and, like you said, Aidan, if that leaf somehow it fits and it makes that picture that you were trying to think of, maybe because subconsciously you're always trying to find something that will inspire that picture to be complete. Maybe you're already looking for it subconsciously. Maybe you're already looking for the leaf that falls from the tree or the crack in the pavement, whatever. You're just looking for it subconsciously, so it clicks. It might mean something different to, I don't know, say Ludus was looking for the picture, I was looking for, I don't know, the next way to make money. Maybe I interpret that as something completely different. I don't know. That's what I just wanted to wrap the whole thing up. I have it typed in my little chat box here to remind me, so excuse me.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, not quite on that stuff, but I think it kind of ties in. I think a lot of when we'd say, you know, I was lucky I escaped a car crash, or I was unlucky I got hit out the rear end, or something like that. It kind of boils down to one of the old lectures that Jacques did, which is called "Looking for Justice." I really think like luck plays a whole, or some elements of luck at least. There's kind of different bits, but some elements of luck, as in, you know, oh, well done, you were, or like, you know, you were really lucky to do this, or something like that, or, you know, I don't know, say you enter some sort of competition. I've done this before. Like, I played rugby and I committed a foul. The referee didn't see it, and I got away with it. So, and I was like, yes, that's lucky. But really, that is me knowing it was a foul. Justice says that it should be stopped and there's a penalty there, or whatever. But I got away with it. So that's kind of lucky. And I think it's, you know, to consider yourself lucky or unlucky about something, you have to have an idea of what's normal, an expectation of what's normal, rather than the view that kind of Jacques says, which is what happens is what happens, and you have to deal with that and accept that. Who's next? Ludus?
Yeah, I would just like to comment on the seemingly semantic, and I would go as far as to say problem, really. Because what we're discussing so far, I mean, okay, so luck, you know, Joe, you said you don't even believe in such a thing. Aidan, you had views. I had views. Mick had views. I mean, so far, really, there's no consensus. Why would there not be a consensus? Because so far, as we can judge right here, I've actually took a definition from Oxford Dictionary. It says a noun, success or failure, apparently brought by chance rather than through one's own actions. Now, it just seems like a fucking submenu of a submenu of a submenu. It's, you know, what I'm talking about is basically if right here what we would have read in the definition instead would have been, 1 plus 2 makes 3. It's a mathematical fact, all that shit, right? But that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at such and such, and then the word chance is in there, which is not touchable. You can't smell that thing. It doesn't wear size 6 on your body. You can't fit it on a wall. So what is that? So you have to learn about that even more, and then that may have vague, meaning. So what are we really looking at and talking about? It really seems like an extensively vague concept. So I would just like to really kind of posit and that perhaps that needs some consideration before we even have any other sort of discussion, or at least in outside. I mean, this is to discuss the subject. I'm not saying we should stop. I'm just saying that if people are saying, look, unless they know an actual technical definition, then it's not really going to be too much more outside of just subjective point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I came up with a definition that works for me, which is an extreme divergence from one's expectations. So, like if you flip a coin, then your expectation is heads or tails, and if it lands on the edge, that's an extreme diversion from your expectations. So, Jesus, it's a bit of an overreaction, Ludus.
It was cool, man. I didn't expect such an example. I just thought it's a cool example.
All right, cheers. That makes me happy. But like on the subject, I mean, just like kind of philosophizing about it and thinking about it. I'm starting. I kind of want to find alternative sources that conflict or counter or argue against the deterministic point of view. Just because so much of what I believe and understand right now is based on that principle of determinism, and I wouldn't want to limit myself, but obviously most of the material that I've found regarding anti-determinism is from, like, say, religious practices, which I don't find any relevance in. I found, like, the closest I've got is Terence McKenna, who was a guy that was he considered himself a spiritual explorer, psychedelics, but he also did a lot of social commentary, and he basically mentioned determinism in the sense he said the universe is largely deterministic, but I'd like to know what he meant by that. He didn't necessarily preach free will or anything like that, and a lot of what he said I did align with the scientific principle, but I would definitely like to try and get my head around a mechanism that didn't work off determinism. That would interest me. I was just wondering if anyone else had any sources on anything like that.
I think I'm next. So yes, okay. So like I've written in the chat, I have come across a person who, yeah, I've asked about it in the previous talk. I'm not going to reinforce it. Peter Boghossian or Boghossian, whatever the pronunciation may be. He is a philosophy professor or doctor. I can't remember. And his words, some common truths. Now, I don't think anything else that can contradict deterministic or mechanistic point of view than something that can be called a truth. I think at one of his lectures he literally said, if you're a relativist, I don't think I have anything that will convince you. Right? Yes. So I don't know if that's of any interest to anybody. I definitely recommend, and I will, share the link in the chat box. So for anybody's interest, you can just check it out. That's all I got.
Yeah, I don't have too much that goes directly against determinism. There's, it says in the chat box, chaotic, and the kind of whole thing of chaos is a scientific field, not generally what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about chaos. Chaos is a scientific field. It's called, what is it, non-linear kind of determinism. It still is determinism, but kind of disrupts some of the basic ideas of quite a lot of classical determinism and quite a lot of scientific thinking up until about the 70s, which was all dissected down into individual components, add them back up together. If you know everything about the individual components, then you know about the whole thing. There's systems that have been proven to be not like this, such as the cloud and the the kind of wind system, weather systems, and this is kind of like ties into why we don't get long-term forecasts, because as the common analogy goes, if a butterfly flaps its wings in Japan, then it might cause a hurricane in London. Insert places. But generally, that's the kind of thing, because, and they showed this, basically with all the scientific models of the weather and stuff, they at one point kind of got through a graph, and it was like, I don't know, it was like this. So this is a graph with some sort of stats, and it goes like, I don't know, like that, say. And he basically, he ran through this weather program, got to a point around here somewhere, and basically started up again from that same point, but missed off like 1 decimal place right at the very end by accident. And it caused the system to kind of go like this. Kind of flow it for a while and kind of diverge, and then it was kind of, and then it ended up like that. I don't know if you can see this with my horrible graphics. But basically it very slowly diverged into a completely separate system with this tiny, tiny change. Whereas quite a lot of the science before that was the idea that noise in the system, which is a very, very tiny change, basically gets cancelled out by the overall trend. And so that you'd see in a system like this, it would actually maybe diverge for a little bit, but then it will come back into the same trend. It's a very interesting format of, it's called like nonlinear equations, where you can't just go n to the 6th is this if you know n to the 2. You have to step through every single step. And there's quite a lot in nature at the moment which kind of looks like this, and does kind of challenge a bit of classic determinism. So yeah, that was my kind of spiel on that stuff. If anyone wants to look into it more, I've got a book that I read which wasn't too detailed, so you might want to read something different. But in the shop.
Well, in regards to reading something different, that's precisely why I put the X down. Another person who clearly refers about it in just the beginning of term is Robert Sapolsky. If I'm not mistaken, then in the very first lecture, he literally says, you know, a book list, more or less, and he says that it makes or breaks your thinking. It changes people's lives, and it's actually just called chaos. As far as I understand, again, anybody who's interested, just, you know, look up the human behavioral biology, or just behavioral biology by Robert Sapolsky. He, I think, said that in the very first lecture. If I'm mistaken again, please call me on my bullshit.
What's the name of that book, Lewis? You type it in chat, please. I'll Kindle it. It's probably free.
No, yeah, it's an interesting book. It got me into some of the ideas, but there's a lot of, oh, this scientist one day, he decided to do a weird thing and sleep and change to a 25-hour day. And so he was constantly going out of phase with his other scientists, and everyone thought he was crazy. And then 5 years later, he wrote this paper that was kind of interesting. And it was just kind of jumping about. And interestingly, it was more about the characters that led into this whole new science than to really getting a good explanation of the theories behind it. I thought. I came away kind of still a bit. This is kind of why this whole thing was caveated. It's still a bit kind of. I don't quite get it. It was an interesting read. I'll give it that. Anyway, so that's cool. Did anyone have anything else on luck think that was.
Nope.
Wow. Yeah, that was generally cool, guys. Thanks for a good talk today, then. Next week, we've actually got a slightly longer amount of videos to watch. We thought we'd finish up this section. We've got death and then limitation. Death is actually an hour-long video, just to warn you guys. Limitation is fairly quick. So maybe I'm going to try and make sure I watch it, not just on the day. I tend to watch it just beforehand, but I probably won't have time. So just to give you guys a heads up, death and limitation next week. Thanks everyone for coming along. Thanks William, especially for joining us this week. I think I can actually see you. Good to have you here, and thanks everyone for watching the recording. I'm going to stop the broadcast.